Hey everyone, where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments below, I'd love to know. Let's dive into a story that might just leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about trust and love. Meet Ryan Walker, a 35-year-old software engineer living in the suburbs of Seattle, Washington. On the surface, Ryan's life seemed picture perfect. He had a beautiful wife, Emily, who worked as an interior designer. Together, they shared a cozy home with their 7-year-old son Ethan and their golden retriever, Max. Neighbors often called them the ideal family, the kind you'd see in a glossy magazine ad. Ryan was hardworking, attentive, and deeply in love with Emily. He believed he had it all, a fulfilling career, a loving wife, and a family that meant the world to him. But as they say, perfection is often an illusion. It was a chilly Thursday evening when something felt off. Ryan sat in his home office, finishing up a late-night project. The soft hum of his laptop and the occasional rustle of wind outside were the only sounds in the room. From the corner of his eye, he noticed Emily pacing in the living room, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was hushed, almost a whisper. He wouldn't have thought much of it, except for the way she kept glancing toward his office, as if checking to see if he was still there. Curiosity got the better of him. He leaned back in his chair, straining to catch fragments of her conversation. I settled okay? He was safe, predictable. But I can't do this forever. The words sliced through the air like a blade, each one heavier than the last. Ryan froze. Had he heard that right? Was Emily talking about him? The thought was absurd, unthinkable. His heart pounded in his chest as a cold wave of dread washed over him. Suddenly, the warm, familiar world he knew felt alien, fragile, like glass on the verge of shattering. What would you do if you overheard the person you loved say something like that? Would you confront them? Brush it off? Pretend you didn't hear? Let me know in the comments, because this is where Ryan's journey began. A journey that would change his life forever. Ryan couldn't shake those words. I settled, safe, predictable. The phrases replayed in his mind like a broken record. He sat frozen in his office chair, staring blankly at the glowing screen in front of him. The report he was working on blurred into meaningless lines of text. Emily's voice, those sharp and painful words, echoed through his thoughts, chipping away at the image of the life he thought they shared. He glanced at the clock. It was just past midnight. The house was eerily quiet now. Emily had retreated to their bedroom after her phone call, leaving Ryan alone with his spiraling thoughts. He couldn't ignore the unease gnawing at him, a sense that something was deeply wrong. Was it paranoia? Or was this the moment everything began to unravel? Ryan rubbed his temples, trying to think clearly. Emily had been distant lately, but he chalked it up to her demanding work schedule. She'd spent more evenings out, consulting with clients, than usual. Ethan had noticed it too, asking why mommy wasn't home for dinner as often. Ryan had assured their son that everything was fine, routine even. But now he wasn't so sure. He stood and walked to the living room, his bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. The air felt heavy, thick with tension. Emily's phone was still on the coffee table, charging. He hesitated, glancing toward the staircase. She was likely asleep, or so he hoped. His pulse quickened as he reached for the phone. This wasn't who he was. He respected her privacy. But those words, those damning words, demanded answers. Unlocking the phone was easier than he expected. They shared everything, or so he thought, and he knew her passcode. It took only seconds for guilt to set in as he scrolled through her messages. Most were mundane, reminders about Ethan's school projects, client updates, texts from her mom. But then a thread caught his eye, a name he didn't recognize. Ryan's stomach tightened as he opened the chat. The messages were casual at first, but as he scrolled back they became more personal, intimate even. There were inside jokes he didn't understand, compliments exchanged late at night, and photos of Emily he'd never seen before. His breath hitched when he read a message from just a few days ago. I can't wait to see you again. You make me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in years. The reply from Chase was just as damning. Soon he'll never know. We'll have everything we've dreamed of. Ryan's hand shook as he set the phone down, his heart pounding in his chest. A wave of nausea threatened to overwhelm him. This wasn't real, it couldn't be. Emily, his Emily, was having an affair? The woman he'd built a life with, the mother of his son, was lying to him? Betraying him? The betrayal felt like a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. He stumbled back into his office, closing the door behind him as quietly as he could. He needed to think, to process, but his thoughts were a chaotic storm. Anger, sadness, disbelief, they all collided in his mind, leaving him raw and vulnerable. He sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands. His world was crumbling around him and he didn't know how to stop it. A memory surfaced, unbidden. Their anniversary dinner last month. Emily had seemed distracted that night, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. He'd asked if everything was okay and she'd assured him it was just stress from work. He believed her. He always believed her. God, I'm such an idiot, Ryan muttered under his breath, his voice thick with emotion. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms as he fought to keep his composure. He couldn't lose it, not yet. Ethan was upstairs, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing below. Ryan had to protect him from this no matter what. But what now? Should he confront Emily? Demand answers? Or should he wait, gather more evidence, and try to understand the full extent of her betrayal? His mind raced with possibilities, none of them offering solace. One thing was clear, the life he thought he knew was a lie, and he couldn't ignore it any longer. As the first rays of dawn crept through the curtains, Ryan made a decision. He would find out the truth no matter how much it hurt. For Ethan's sake and for his own. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The morning light streamed through the windows as Ryan sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Sleep had evaded him all night. His mind was a battlefield, the messages he'd found on Emily's phone clashing with his memories of their life together. He couldn't shake the image of her smiling, laughing with Chase in those messages. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the mug tighter. What had gone wrong? And more importantly, where could he even begin to untangle this mess? The shrill chime of the doorbell broke his trance, startling him enough to slosh coffee onto the table. Muttering a curse, he grabbed a napkin on his way to the door. Standing on the porch was Jenny, their cheerful next-door neighbor, with a tray of muffins in hand. "Morning, Ryan," she said, her smile warm and bright. "Thought I'd bring these over. You guys have been so busy lately, barely see you anymore." Ryan forced a polite grin, his emotions too raw to muster genuine warmth. "Thanks, Jenny. That's really thoughtful. Come on in." Jenny stepped inside, setting the tray on the counter as her sharp eyes studied him. "Are you okay? You look tired." He hesitated, caught between his instinct to stay guarded and the mounting pressure to share his burden. Jenny had always been kind and observant, a steady presence in their lives. Could he trust her? He decided to take the risk. "I've been better," Ryan admitted, motioning for her to sit at the kitchen table. He joined her, running a hand through his hair. "Jenny, can I ask you something? And I need you to be completely honest." Her brows furrowed in concern and she leaned forward slightly. "Of course. What's going on?" "It's about Emily," he began cautiously, lowering his voice. "Have you noticed anything strange? Has she said anything to you recently?" Jenny's eyes widened slightly, and she seemed to weigh her words before answering. "Strange? Like what?" Ryan sighed deeply, the weight of the past night pressing on his chest. "I overheard her last night on the phone. She said things that made me think she's not happy with me. Then I found messages. From someone named Chase." Jenny's face paled, and she looked away momentarily as if debating whether to speak. When her gaze returned to his, there was a mix of guilt and sympathy in her eyes. "Ryan, I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but I've seen Emily out a few times recently. With a man." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean, out with a man? Where?" Jenny hesitated, her voice soft but steady. "At that little cafe on Elm Street. I saw them twice, maybe 3 times. They were sitting close, talking. It didn't look like just work." Ryan clenched his jaw, his thoughts spiraling. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to assume anything," Jenny said, her tone apologetic. "You two always seem so solid. I thought maybe it was a client or a friend." His shoulders sagged as he buried his face in his hands. He had hoped the messages were some sort of misunderstanding, but this felt like confirmation. The betrayal wasn't just digital, it was real. Jenny reached out, resting a hand on his arm. "Ryan, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to hurt you, but I thought you deserved to know." He nodded slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I needed to hear it. Thank you." Jenny hesitated again, then added, "If you need help, anything, I'm here." Even if it's just keeping an eye out. Ryan managed a faint smile. I appreciate that, Jenny. I don't know what to do right now. Should I confront her? Or wait and get more proof? Jenny sighed, clearly conflicted. That's a tough one. But whatever you decide, just know you're not alone. You've got people who care about you. After she left, the silence of the house felt oppressive. Ryan stood in the middle of the kitchen, the pieces of the puzzle swirling in his mind. The messages. Jenny's confession. The cafe on Elm Street. It all pointed to one horrifying conclusion. Emily was cheating on him. But why? The question gnawed at him, refusing to let go. Was it something he had done, or failed to do? He shook his head. No, he couldn't let himself spiral into self-blame. Not yet. He needed answers. With trembling hands, he picked up his phone and dialed a familiar number. Marcus, his old college buddy, answered on the second ring. Ryan. Long time, man. What's up? Ryan's voice was raw. Marcus, I need your help. It's serious? The tone of the conversation shifted instantly. What's going on? I think Emily's cheating on me, Ryan said, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. He quickly explained everything. The phone call, the messages, Jenny's observations. Marcus was silent for a moment before speaking, his voice firm. I'm sorry to hear that, Ryan. But you're doing the right thing by getting proof before jumping to conclusions. I'll start digging. Just send me anything you have. Phone numbers, photos, whatever. Thanks, man, Ryan said, a flicker of hope breaking through his despair. I owe you. Don't worry about it. We'll get to the bottom of this. When the call ended, Ryan sat in his office staring at the photo on his desk, a picture of him and Emily on their wedding day. He remembered the way she'd looked at him that day, her eyes filled with love and promise. How had they gotten here? And what would he find when Marcus started digging? Now, I want to hear from you. What would you do in Ryan's situation? Would you confront Emily right away, or would you wait and gather more evidence? Share your thoughts in the comments below. You might just help someone facing a similar dilemma. The sound of typing filled the room as Ryan sat at his desk, his laptop open and the glow of the screen illuminating his troubled face. Marcus, his old college friend turned private investigator, had wasted no time. That morning, Marcus had sent Ryan a secure link to upload anything he had on Emily and Chase. Ryan had spent the last hour gathering screenshots of messages, phone logs, and the few photos from her phone that suggested more than casual conversation. As he clicked send, a sense of unease settled over him. Marcus had assured him that they'd worked discreetly, but Ryan felt exposed. His world was already unraveling, and now he had to trust someone else to help him pick up the pieces. A message popped up on his screen. Marcus, received everything. Starting now. I'll keep you posted. Ryan sighed, leaning back in his chair. He knew this wasn't going to be easy. He wasn't the kind of man who pried into his wife's life, but this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Ethan, their son, and the life they'd built together. He needed the truth no matter how ugly it might be. Later that evening, Marcus called. Ryan, Marcus began, his tone serious. I found something. Emily's been meeting with Chase more often than you might think. I tracked her recent credit card transactions. There are charges for a hotel downtown. Same place, multiple times over the last 2 months. Ryan's stomach turned. A hotel? He repeated, barely able to keep his voice steady. Yes, Marcus confirmed. And there's more. I cross-referenced her phone location with Chase's. They were both there on the same nights. This isn't just speculation, Ryan. Ryan closed his eyes, gripping the edge of the desk until his knuckles turned white. What else? I pulled up some public records on Chase, Marcus continued. He's no angel. He's been divorced twice, both times under accusations of infidelity. He's also involved in some shady financial dealings, companies that don't seem to exist anymore, debts that mysteriously vanish. This guy is a pro manipulator. Ryan's mind reeled. So, he's been playing her? Possibly, Marcus replied. But she's not innocent here. Ryan, this is serious. I don't know what her endgame is, but it's clear she's been lying to you for a while. The next day, Marcus sent Ryan a folder labeled Evidence. Inside were photos of Emily and Chase at the cafe Jenny had mentioned. There were receipts from the hotel, timestamped to match Marcus's GPS data. But the most damning evidence was a series of private emails between Emily and Chase that Marcus had managed to retrieve. One email, dated 2 weeks prior, read, I can't keep living this lie. He deserves better, but I'm too far in now. You're the only one who understands me, Chase. With you, I feel alive. But I need more time to figure things out. Ryan stared at the screen, his vision blurring. She didn't just betray him, she planned to leave him. For the first time, anger began to overshadow the pain. How could she do this? To him? To Ethan? He slammed the laptop shut and stood pacing the room. Flashes of their life together filled his mind, their wedding day, the birth of their son, family vacations. Were all those memories a lie? Later that evening, Marcus called again. This time his voice was sharp. Ryan, I need you to sit down for this. What is it? Ryan asked, gripping the phone tightly. I dug deeper into Chase's history. He's not just a manipulator, he's a predator. He's done this before. He seduces married women, convinces them to leave their families, and then he drains their finances. Once they're out of money, he disappears. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. You're saying he's after Emily's money? Exactly, Marcus confirmed. And here's the kicker, your name's on most of the accounts. If she's been giving him access, he could ruin you financially. Ryan's mind raced. He remembered the times Emily had asked him to sign paperwork without much explanation, claiming it was for joint investments or household expenses. Had he been blind to all of this? Ryan, you need to act fast, Marcus urged. I can dig deeper, but if you don't confront her soon, she could cause more damage than just emotional. That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He sat in his office, staring at the evidence spread out before him. The photos, the emails, the hotel receipts. Every piece was like a dagger to the heart, but it also fueled his resolve. One email stood out, dated the day before. It was from Chase to Emily. We're almost there, babe. Just one more push and we can finally be free. Trust me, it's all going to work out. Ryan's jaw tightened. Free? From what? From him? From their life together? The audacity of it all made his blood boil. Chase was overconfident, smug in his belief that Ryan was too clueless to notice. But Ryan wasn't clueless anymore. He leaned forward, opening a blank document on his laptop. He began jotting down a plan, a way to confront Emily and expose Chase for the fraud he was. This wasn't just about saving his marriage anymore. It was about protecting his son, his finances, and his dignity. Before shutting the laptop, Ryan uploaded one final piece of evidence to Marcus, a bank statement Emily had left in the kitchen drawer. It showed a transfer of $10,000 to an unfamiliar account, dated just a week ago. Marcus, I found something else, Ryan texted. Check this out. What do you think Ryan should do next? Should he confront Emily with what he knows now, or wait until Marcus uncovers even more? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your advice could make all the difference. Ryan sat in his car outside the downtown cafe, his heart racing. Marcus had sent him more information earlier that day, including new photos of Chase with another woman. Chase isn't just involved with Emily, Marcus had explained. He's running the same game on someone else, a woman named Claire Simmons. Divorced, mid-40s, financially stable. He's siphoning money from her accounts, too. Ryan couldn't believe it. This wasn't just about Emily's betrayal anymore. Chase was a predator weaving a web of lies to ensnare multiple women. Marcus, how do I even process this? Ryan had asked during their last call. You stay calm, stay smart, and stick to the plan, Marcus had said. We've got leverage now. Use it. As Ryan stepped into the cafe, he spotted Jenny sitting in a corner booth, a stack of papers spread out in front of her. Jenny had offered to help after hearing the latest revelations. I can do some digging too, she'd said. Chase won't know what hit him. Hey, Jenny greeted him, pushing a steaming cup of coffee toward him. You look like you haven't slept in days. Ryan gave her a tired smile. Thanks for doing this. What did you find? Jenny tapped a paper with her finger. This guy's been scamming women for years. Fake companies, fake promises. He's got a trail of victims who either don't want to talk or are too embarrassed to come forward. And Emily, she hesitated, then handed Ryan a photo. She's more involved than we thought. Ryan's stomach sank as he stared at the image. It was a blurry shot of Emily and Chase at a hotel bar. Emily had a file folder in her hands and Chase was leaning in, his expression smug. What's that? Ryan asked, his voice strained. Documents, Jenny said. Based on the timestamp, this was the night before that $10,000 transfer. She's not just being manipulated, Ryan. She's actively helping him. Ryan's jaw tightened. How could she do this? How could she let herself get dragged into something like this? Jenny reached out, placing a hand on his arm. Ryan, people make stupid decisions when they're desperate or blinded by someone like Chase. But you need to focus. This is about protecting yourself and Ethan. That evening, Ryan sat in his office with Marcus on a video call. We've got enough to blow this wide open, Marcus said. But we need to be strategic. If Emily's complicit, confronting her could backfire. Ryan nodded, his face set in determination. What's the next step? We keep digging, Marcus said. I've already reached out to Claire Simmons. She's hesitant but willing to meet with you. If you can convince her to share her story, it'll strengthen our case against Chase. The next day, Ryan met Claire at a quiet park on the edge of town. She was a petite woman with tired eyes and a nervous demeanor. I don't know why I'm here, she said as they sat on a bench. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid, Ryan said gently. This guy is a professional manipulator. He fooled my wife too. Claire looked down at her hands. He said all the right things. Made me feel like I mattered. But then he started asking for money, little things at first. Investments, he called them. I didn't think twice until my accounts started draining faster than I could refill them. Ryan showed her the evidence Marcus had gathered. You're not alone, Claire. He's done this before and he's doing it to Emily now. Her eyes widened as she flipped through the photos and documents. Emily's helping him? She's married to you and she's helping him? Ryan nodded grimly. That's why I need your help. Together we can stop him before he ruins more lives. Claire hesitated, then gave a small nod. Okay, I'm in. Back at home, Ryan sat with Marcus on another call outlining their plan. Claire's agreed to cooperate, Ryan said. She's going to pull her financial records and provide a statement. Good, Marcus said. This is a big win, Ryan. But we need to move quickly. Chase is arrogant, but he's not stupid. If he catches wind of what we're doing, he'll disappear. Ryan's phone buzzed with a new message from Jenny. Jenny, check your email. Found something huge. Ryan opened the email, his eyes scanning the document Jenny had sent. It was a bank statement showing a $20,000 transfer from Emily's business account to one of Chase's shell companies. Unbelievable, Ryan muttered. She's funneling money directly to him. Marcus leaned forward on the screen. This changes everything. We've got the financial proof now. He's using her to launder money. Ryan's fists clenched as a wave of anger surged through him. He thinks he's untouchable, doesn't he? That he can just use people and walk away. Not this time, Marcus said. This time we're going to stop him. By the end of the night, Ryan felt a small sense of relief for the first time in days. He had allies now, Jenny, Marcus, and Claire. Together they were building a case against Chase piece by piece. But as he stared at the evidence on his desk, one question lingered in his mind. What would Emily do when she realized her lies were unraveling? Now it's your turn. If you were Ryan, how would you confront Emily? Would you reveal everything now or wait until the case against Chase was airtight? Let me know in the comments. Your insights could be the key to justice. Chase leaned back in his leather office chair, swirling a glass of scotch as he scrolled through his phone. The usual smug grin tugged at his lips. Everything was falling into place. Emily was hooked, transferring money as planned, and Claire had yet to suspect he'd ghost her after he bled her dry. The thrill of juggling these schemes made him feel invincible. But then a notification flashed on his phone, a new email from an anonymous sender. Subject: You're not as clever as you think. Attachment: hotel footage, financial records, email exchanges. Chase sat up, the glass nearly slipping from his hand. He opened the email, his heartbeat spiking. As he scanned the contents, his grin faltered. The attachment contained a damning collection of evidence. Photos of him with Emily, transfers from her account to his shell company, and even messages he'd sent to Claire. Who the hell? Chase muttered, his mind racing. Was it Ryan? No, that idiot didn't seem capable of this. Maybe Claire had hired someone? Or worse, Emily's guilt had driven her to confess. He tossed the phone onto the desk, pacing the room. Damn it. How did they get this? Meanwhile, Emily was home, oblivious to the storm brewing. She sat at the dining table, her laptop open, working on an interior design pitch. The faint hum of the dishwasher filled the silence. Her phone buzzed beside her. It was Chase. Hey, she answered softly, her voice tinged with warmth. We've got a problem, Chase snapped, his tone slicing through her calm. Someone's digging into us? Emily's heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? I got an email, he growled. Photos, bank transfers, emails. They know Emily. They have proof? Emily's voice trembled. Oh, who would do this? How the hell should I know? Chase barked. You said Ryan wouldn't figure it out. Are you sure he hasn't been snooping? Emily's mind raced. Ryan had been distant lately, quieter than usual, but she dismissed it as stress from work. Could he have known? I don't think so, she said, though doubt lingered in her voice. He would have confronted me by now. Chase's frustration boiled over. Well, someone knows. If they leak this, we're both screwed. What do you want me to do? Emily asked, panic rising. Keep an eye on him, Chase ordered. If he knows something, you need to find out. And Emily, he hesitated. If this blows up, don't think I'll go down alone. The line went dead, leaving Emily staring at her phone, her hands trembling. She hadn't signed up for this level of risk. She thought Chase loved her, that they had a future. Now she wasn't so sure. Back at the cafe, Marcus and Ryan were reviewing the latest developments. Marcus had leaked the anonymous email to Chase deliberately to rattle him, and it was working. The goal was to force Chase into making a mistake. He's panicking, Marcus said, tapping his tablet. I've got surveillance on him. He's been calling his lawyer, moving money around. He knows the walls are closing in. Ryan nodded, his expression grim. Good. Let him squirm. Jenny joined them, sliding into the booth with her laptop. I've been keeping tabs on Emily's accounts. Another $5,000 just disappeared into one of Chase's shell companies. She's still sending him money? Ryan's fists clenched. She's blinded by him. She doesn't even see what he's doing. Jenny placed a comforting hand on his arm. She'll see soon enough. Once we have everything, she won't be able to deny it. That night, Chase made his move. He walked into the hotel bar where he and Emily often met. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by a nervous energy. He spotted Emily sitting in their usual booth, nursing a glass of wine. She looked up, her face pale. Chase, what's going on? She asked as he slid into the seat across from her. We need to talk, he said, keeping his voice low. This isn't just about us anymore. Someone's targeting me. If they go public with this, it could ruin everything, for both of us. Emily frowned. What do you mean targeting you? Why would someone care about us? Because it's not just us. Chase hissed. There are other business dealings. If they dig too deep, it won't just be your husband who finds out. Emily's breath caught. You said I could trust you. And you can, Chase said quickly, reaching across the table to grab her hand. But you need to trust me now more than ever. If you want to keep Ryan from finding out, we need to act fast. Move the rest of the money. We'll leave town, start fresh. Emily hesitated. Leave town? Just like that? It's the only way, Chase insisted, squeezing her hand. I'll handle everything. You just need to trust me. Back at home, Ryan received a text from Marcus. Marcus, he's making his move. He told Emily to drain her accounts. This is it. Ryan's resolve hardened. What's the next step? He replied. Marcus, we intercept. Tomorrow we confront him, and her. Time to end this. Emily sat alone in the hotel bar after Chase left, her mind swirling. Something about his desperation didn't sit right with her. For the first time, she wondered if Ryan had been more perceptive than she thought. Had she underestimated him? The thought unsettled her. Chase, meanwhile, sat in his car, dialing another number. A woman answered, a familiar voice to him but not to Ryan. Chase? Claire's voice was wary. Claire, hey, Chase said, his voice taking on a smooth, persuasive tone. I've been thinking about you. I know things have been complicated, but I want to make it right. Claire's silence spoke volumes. Chase pressed on. Listen, I've got some new opportunities coming up. I'd love for you to be part of them. But Claire wasn't biting. No, Chase. I'm done with your games. She hung up, leaving Chase gripping the phone, his jaw clenched. His carefully built empire of manipulation was starting to crumble. As tension mounted, the stage was set for the next confrontation. Ryan, armed with irrefutable evidence and newfound allies, was ready to take back control. Chase, desperate and cornered, was willing to risk everything to maintain his grip. And Emily, caught between them, was finally beginning to question the man she thought she knew. What would you do if you were in Ryan's shoes? Confront Chase and Emily together or handle them separately? Let me know your thoughts. This story is just getting started. Ryan sat in his dimly lit office, the sound of the clock ticking against the wall. The evidence on Chase was mounting, but he knew this fight wasn't his alone. He needed more support to ensure Chase couldn't slip through their fingers. Marcus had done his part and Claire was now willing to step forward, but there were still loose ends that needed tying up. Ryan, you ready? Jenny's voice called from the doorway. She stepped inside, holding a thick file in her hands. I've got more on Chase. This guy's dirtier than we thought. Ryan motioned for her to sit as she laid out the contents on the desk. Bank statements, fraudulent business filings, and testimonies from 2 other women Chase had scammed. This one, Jenny pointed to a name on a document, Marissa Turner. She was a real estate agent Chase dated 5 years ago. He got her to invest in his fake company and then ghosted her after draining her savings. She's willing to talk. Ryan's brow furrowed. Why is it always women like Marissa and Claire? They're successful, smart. How does he pull this off? Jenny shrugged. Chase plays on emotions. He makes them feel special, seen, and loved until they're too deep to see his real motives. He's a predator, Ryan. Ryan clenched his fists. Not this time. He's not getting away with it. The next day, Ryan met Marissa at a local coffee shop. She was a tall woman with a strong presence, but her eyes carried a heaviness that spoke of betrayal and regret. She shook Ryan's hand firmly. Marcus filled me in, she began, sitting across from him. I still feel stupid for falling for his lies, but if I can help stop him, I'm in. Marissa, I know it's not easy to relive this, Ryan said. But anything you can share, how he approached you, what he said, it could be the key to taking him down. She nodded, taking a deep breath. Chase has a pattern. He starts small, taking you out to fancy dinners, talking about his big plans. Then he plays the victim, says he needs help with an investment or a deal that fell through. I gave him $50,000 before I realized the truth. Ryan's jaw tightened. Did he threaten you when you tried to cut him off? He's subtle, Marissa said. It's more like psychological manipulation. He made me feel like I was abandoning him, like everything would fall apart if I didn't help. Ryan exchanged a glance with Marcus, who sat beside him, scribbling notes. We've got enough to link his scams together, Marcus said. If Marissa is willing to testify, it'll strengthen our case. I'll testify, Marissa said firmly. This guy doesn't deserve to ruin anyone else's life. As Ryan drove home, his phone buzzed. It was Emily. Ryan, can we talk? Her voice was hesitant, almost nervous. Ryan gripped the wheel tightly. What's this about, Emily? There was a long pause. I feel like something's been off between us. I want to fix things. Ryan's stomach churned. Did she know he was onto her? Or was this Chase's influence, trying to deflect suspicion? We'll talk tonight, he said curtly, hanging up. That evening, Ryan gathered with his allies in his living room. Marcus, Jenny, Claire, and now Marissa. Each had a role to play in the plan to expose Chase. Here's the situation, Marcus began, laying out the timeline. Chase is on edge. The email rattled him and he's trying to consolidate his gains. If we push a little harder, he'll make a mistake. And Emily? Jenny asked. Ryan sighed. She's still in denial, but she's starting to doubt him. We need to show her the full picture. That's risky, Claire interjected. What if she warns him? She won't, Ryan said firmly. She may have been fooled, but deep down she's not like him. The next morning, Ryan received a call from Marcus. His voice was urgent. We've got a problem. Chase made contact with one of his lawyers and is planning to leave the country. He's fast-tracking everything. Ryan felt a surge of panic. How long do we have? A day, maybe less, Marcus said. He's planning to meet Emily tonight. You need to act now. Ryan hung up, his mind racing. If Chase disappeared, all their efforts would be for nothing. He called Claire, Marissa, and Jenny, rallying them to meet at Marcus's office. We're going to stop him tonight, Ryan said, his voice resolute. This ends here. That evening, Emily sat nervously in the hotel bar waiting for Chase. She glanced at her phone, her fingers trembling. Something didn't feel right. Chase had been more erratic lately, his charm cracking under pressure. When he arrived, he slid into the seat beside her, his eyes scanning the room. Emily, we're running out of time. Did you move the money? I, I couldn't, she stammered. Ryan's been watching everything. I think he knows. Chase's expression darkened. You don't get it, do you? If he finds out, we're done. You're done. Do you want to lose everything? Emily recoiled at his harsh tone. I thought you cared about me. I do, Chase said, forcing a smile. But we're in this together, Emily. I need you to trust me one more time. Meanwhile, Ryan and his allies were in position. Marcus had planted a microphone in Emily's purse earlier that day. They listened as Chase's desperation spilled out, his lies unraveling in real time. Got him, Marcus said, signaling to Ryan. Let's go. Ryan entered the bar, his heart pounding. He spotted Chase and Emily in the corner booth. Chase's back was to him, but Emily's eyes widened in shock when she saw him. Ryan, she started, but he cut her off. It's over, Emily, Ryan said, his voice steady but cold. He turned to Chase, his glare icy. And you? You thought you could ruin my life and walk away? Chase stood, his smug demeanor gone. Ryan, this isn't what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, Ryan shot back. You've been exposed. And this time you won't get away. Chase's desperate move had backfired. Ryan's allies had gathered enough evidence to ensure his downfall, and Emily was finally seeing the truth. The balance of power had shifted, and for the first time Ryan felt like he was back in control. What would you do next if you were Ryan? Would you focus on confronting Emily, or ensure Chase faces the consequences first? Share your thoughts below. This fight is far from over. The hotel bar was dimly lit, its quiet hum of chatter punctuated by the clink of glasses. Chase sat at the corner booth, a barely touched drink in front of him, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. He hated waiting. His plan to leave the country was set, but Emily was late and that unsettled him. She was usually so prompt, eager even. Something was off. He glanced at his phone, scrolling through his messages. His lawyer had reassured him earlier that day that the offshore accounts were ready, but the email he'd received, the one with all his secrets laid bare, kept flashing in his mind. Come on, Emily, he muttered under his breath, irritation creeping into his voice. At that moment, Emily walked in, her face pale, her movements stiff. She slid into the booth across from him, avoiding eye contact. Chase's eyes narrowed. What took you so long? He asked sharply. I needed time to think, Emily stammered. She fiddled with her purse strap, her fingers trembling. Chase, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Chase leaned forward, his voice low but laced with venom. You don't have a choice, Emily. We're in this together. Do you understand what happens if Ryan finds out? If anyone finds out? Her eyes darted up to meet his, and for the first time, he saw something in her gaze he hadn't seen before, fear mixed with doubt. Meanwhile, Ryan and Marcus sat in a car parked a block away, listening through the microphone Marcus had planted in Emily's purse. The tension in the car was palpable as Chase's words crackled through the speakers. Do you hear how he talks to her? Ryan muttered, gripping the steering wheel. His knuckles turned white. She's terrified of him. Marcus placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder. Stay focused. We need him to slip up, to say something incriminating. Jenny's voice came through the comms. She was stationed at the bar, blending in as a casual patron. He's on edge, she whispered. I can see it in his body language. This guy's unraveling. Ryan took a deep breath, his anger simmering beneath the surface. Let's make sure he unravels completely. Back in the bar, Chase's demeanor shifted. He softened his tone, reaching across the table to take Emily's hand. Look, I know this is hard, but we're so close. Once the money's moved, we'll be free. You trust me, don't you? Emily hesitated. I thought I did, but now. Chase, why do I feel like I don't know you anymore? Chase's smile faltered. What's that supposed to mean? I found things, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Emails, documents. Things you didn't tell me about? Chase's expression hardened. Emily, you don't want to go down this road. Everything I've done has been for us. If you start doubting me now, you'll ruin everything. Her lips quivered, but she nodded. Okay, I need time. As Chase leaned back, Marcus's voice crackled in Ryan's ear. There it is. He's losing control. Ryan stepped out of the car, his heart pounding. It was time. He walked toward the bar, his steps deliberate, his mind focused. Marcus and Jenny followed at a safe distance, ready to step in if needed. Inside, Jenny watched from her seat as Ryan entered. Her eyes met his briefly and she gave a subtle nod. Chase, engrossed in convincing Emily to move the last of her funds, didn't notice Ryan approaching until he was right at the booth. "Ryan?" Emily gasped, her eyes wide with shock. Chase turned slowly, his face a mask of surprise that quickly morphed into a smirk. Well, if it isn't the loving husband." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Cut the act, Chase. It's over." Chase leaned back, feigning nonchalance. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Oh, I think you do," Ryan shot back, his voice cold. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a stack of papers, tossing them onto the table. "Bank transfers, fake companies, stolen money. You've been busy." Chase's eyes flicked to the papers, his smirk faltering. "You've been snooping. That's cute." "No, it's called uncovering the truth," Ryan said, his voice rising. "You've been scamming women, manipulating them, ruining their lives. And now it's all out in the open." Emily's gaze darted between them, confusion and fear etched on her face. "What is he talking about, Chase?" Chase tried to laugh it off, but his tone was strained. "He's making things up, Emily. Don't listen to him." Ryan turned to her, his voice softer. "Emily, look at the evidence. You know he's been lying to you." Emily hesitated, then picked up the papers with trembling hands. Her eyes scanned the documents, her face draining of color with each line she read. "Is this true?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Emily, don't," Chase started, but she cut him off. This true?" she demanded, her voice louder now, trembling with anger. Chase's mask slipped. The charming, confident facade crumbled as he realized he was cornered. "It's not what it looks like," he said, his voice desperate. Ryan stepped closer, his voice steady. "It's exactly what it looks like. And now you're finished?" As the confrontation escalated, Marcus signaled to Claire and Marissa, who were waiting nearby. They entered the bar, their presence a final blow to Chase's crumbling confidence. Claire spoke first, her voice calm but firm. "Chase, it's over. You can't keep running from this." Marissa stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "You've hurt too many people. It's time to pay for what you've done." Chase looked around, realizing he was surrounded. The confidence he'd wielded so easily was gone, replaced by panic. "You think you've won?" he sneered, trying to regain control. "This isn't over." Ryan leaned in, his voice low but filled with resolve. "Oh, it's over. And this time you don't get to walk away." As Chase stumbled out of the bar, his world collapsing around him, Ryan turned to his allies. For the first time in weeks he felt a flicker of hope. The evidence they had would ensure Chase faced justice, but there was still one last move to make, ensuring Emily understood the full extent of her choices. Now, Ryan was ready for the final confrontation, one that would determine the future of his family and his own peace of mind. What would you do in Ryan's shoes? How would you handle the next steps? Share your thoughts below. This journey is nearing its conclusion, but the toughest choices are yet to come. Ryan stood tall in the dimly lit courtroom lobby, his sharp suit reflecting his determined demeanor. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, collecting every shred of evidence against Chase. Today was the day Chase's web of lies would collapse. Marcus, Claire, Marissa, and even Jenny stood by him, his unshakable allies who had become his second family through this ordeal. Emily sat silently on a nearby bench, her head down. Ryan glanced at her briefly, but there was no softness in his gaze. She had chosen her path, and today she would face the consequences of that decision. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked, stepping beside him. Ryan exhaled, his jaw tightening. "I've been ready for weeks. Let's end this." The courtroom was packed with murmurs as Chase entered, his once confident stride reduced to a defensive shuffle. His expensive suit couldn't hide the sweat on his brow or the anxiety in his eyes. The charm he had wielded so effectively was now useless in the face of overwhelming evidence. Chase's lawyer approached Ryan and Marcus before the proceedings began. "My client has no comment at this time," he said, his tone clipped. "We'll address everything during the hearing." Ryan stepped forward, his voice calm but cutting. "No comment? Typical. Your client's been stealing, lying, and ruining lives for years. Let's see how far his silence gets him today." The lawyer glared, but Ryan didn't flinch. He was done playing games. As the hearing began, the prosecutor methodically presented the evidence Marcus and Ryan had uncovered. fraudulent bank transfers, fake company filings, and testimonies from Claire, Marissa, and 2 other victims Chase had conned. Every detail was a nail in Chase's coffin. The room grew tense as Emily was called to the stand. She hesitated, her hands shaking as she adjusted the microphone. Ryan watched her closely, his expression unreadable. "Mrs. Walker," the prosecutor began, "can you confirm that you transferred $25,000 to Mr. Chase under the pretense of a business investment?" Emily's voice wavered. "Yes." "And were you aware that these funds were being funneled into a shell company with no legitimate operations?" Emily looked down, tears brimming in her eyes. "I didn't know at the time. Chase said it was for us. For a new start." Ryan clenched his fists but remained silent. This wasn't the time for anger, it was the time for justice. "Mrs. Walker," the prosecutor continued, "at what point did you realize you were being manipulated?" Emily glanced at Ryan, guilt etched across her face. "When I saw the evidence," she admitted. "I didn't want to believe it, but it was all there." Chase smirked from his seat, but his lawyer's whispered warnings kept him from speaking. During a recess, Ryan approached Emily, who was seated alone in the hallway. She looked up at him, her eyes pleading for forgiveness. "Ryan, I'm sorry," she began, her voice breaking. "I didn't see it until it was too late." Ryan stared at her for a long moment. "You didn't see it because you didn't want to," he said, his tone steady but cold. "You let him into our lives, into our finances. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed Ethan." Tears streamed down her face. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Ryan nodded curtly. "You'll start by telling the truth, every last detail. No more lies, Emily." Back in the courtroom, the final blow came when Marcus presented a recording of Chase's conversation with Emily from the hotel bar, captured by the microphone Jenny had planted. The courtroom fell silent as Chase's manipulative tactics were laid bare. "Do you understand what happens if Ryan finds out?" Chase's voice echoed through the room. "If anyone finds out, you'll lose everything." The smug grin vanished from Chase's face. He shifted uncomfortably as the weight of his words sank in. Ryan stood, his voice cutting through the silence. "You didn't just manipulate Emily. You used her, lied to her, and tried to destroy my family. But your lies end here, Chase." The judge called for order as the courtroom erupted with whispers. The verdict was swift and decisive. Chase was sentenced to prison for financial fraud, with additional charges pending for his other schemes. His victims would receive restitution, funded by the seizure of his hidden assets. As Chase was led out in handcuffs, he glared at Ryan. "This isn't over," he spat. Ryan stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "Oh, it's over. You underestimated me, Chase. And now you'll pay for every lie, every scam, and every life you've ruined." Chase's confidence crumbled as the guards escorted him away. Outside the courthouse, Ryan stood with his allies, a sense of relief washing over him. Marcus clapped him on the back. "You did it, Ryan. You stood your ground and took him down." Ryan nodded, his gaze distant. "It wasn't just for me. It was for everyone he hurt." Jenny smiled. "You're stronger than you think, Ryan. Not everyone could have handled this the way you did." As the group dispersed, Ryan lingered outside, staring at the courthouse steps. The journey had been brutal, but he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to rebuild his life. Later that evening, Ryan sat in Ethan's room watching his son sleep. The boy's innocence was a stark contrast to the chaos Ryan had endured. He leaned down, kissing Ethan's forehead. "I promise," he whispered, "I'll protect you from anything like this ever again." As he stood, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was a turning point, not just in his fight against Chase but in his own life. He would move forward, stronger than ever, with no room for doubt or fear. What would you have done in Ryan's shoes? Share your thoughts. This battle is over, but the lessons will last a lifetime. The crisp morning air carried a sense of renewal as Ryan stood on the balcony of his new apartment, sipping his coffee. The view overlooked a park where children played and laughter echoed. It was a stark contrast to the turmoil that had engulfed his life just weeks ago. The chaos Chase had created was now behind him, and Ryan had emerged stronger, not just for himself but for his son Ethan. The legal battle had taken its toll, but it had also proven Ryan's resilience. Chase had been sentenced to 10 years in prison, his smirk replaced by the hollow look of a man stripped of his manipulative power. The court had ordered his assets liquidated to pay restitution to his victims. Each dollar reclaimed was a small piece of justice for the lives he had tried to destroy. Ryan had attended the sentencing, standing among Chase's victims, Claire, Marissa, and several others. It was a moment of closure for them all. Chase had avoided accountability for too long, and now the law had caught up with him. Watching him being led out of the courtroom in handcuffs was a sight Ryan would never forget. For the first time in months, Ryan felt the weight lifting from his shoulders. At home, the pieces of Ryan's life had started to fall back into place. Ethan, unaware of the depth of the family's recent struggles, had adjusted well to the changes. Ryan had worked hard to keep Ethan's world stable, ensuring he felt loved and secure. They spent more time together now, playing catch in the park, building Lego sets, and making pancakes on Saturday mornings. Ryan's determination to be a better father had grown through the ordeal, and Ethan thrived under that love and attention. Emily, on the other hand, had faced her own reckoning. The court had spared her any legal charges after she cooperated fully against Chase, but her relationship with Ryan had irreparably changed. She had moved out shortly after the trial and was now living in a small condo across town. While she frequently asked to see Ethan, Ryan had established firm boundaries. Trust was something she would have to earn back, if ever. One afternoon, Emily had shown up unexpectedly at Ryan's door. She looked fragile, her confident demeanor replaced by vulnerability. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "For everything. For the lies, the betrayal, for hurting you and Ethan." Ryan studied her for a moment before responding. "I've already forgiven you, Emily. But forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to how they were. We'll always share Ethan, but beyond that..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You need to find your own path now, just as I've found mine." Emily nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I hope one day you'll see the person I want to become." Ryan's voice softened. "I hope so too, for Ethan's sake and for your own." Life moved forward. Ryan threw himself into his work, where he earned a promotion for his resilience and focus under pressure. His colleagues, who had rallied around him during the tough times, celebrated his success with genuine pride. Beyond work, Ryan found joy in simple things he had taken for granted: sunlit mornings, quiet evenings reading, and the companionship of Ethan and their dog, Max. He also began reconnecting with old friends he had drifted from over the years. One evening, while sitting with Marcus and Jenny at a local diner, he reflected on the journey. "You know," Ryan said, swirling his coffee, "I never thought I'd be standing here today, stronger, wiser. There were times I wanted to give up." Jenny smiled. "But you didn't. You faced it head on." "Not many people can say that." Marcus chimed in, his tone light. "You've always been tougher than you give yourself credit for, Ryan." Chase picked the wrong guy to mess with. They laughed, the kind of laughter that came easily among friends who had shared a battle and emerged victorious. Ryan felt gratitude swell within him. He had allies, true allies, who had stood by him when he needed them most. Chase's downfall continued to ripple outward. The news of his conviction had spread, and his name became synonymous with deception. Former victims came forward, adding their voices to the growing chorus of condemnation. In prison, Chase's charm was useless. Stripped of his influence and resources, he had no choice but to face the consequences of his actions. Claire and Marissa, once victims of Chase's schemes, found a new sense of purpose. They started a support group for others who had fallen prey to financial fraud and manipulative relationships. Ryan attended one of their meetings as a guest speaker, sharing his experience and encouraging others to reclaim their lives. "You're stronger than you think," he said to the room full of attentive faces. "Chase thought he could break me, but he underestimated the power of truth and resilience. Don't let anyone make you feel small. You're capable of so much more than you realize." The applause that followed wasn't just for his words, it was for the strength each person in that room was reclaiming. As Ryan reflected on the journey, he knew the experience had changed him. He had been forced to confront betrayal, heartbreak, and the fragility of trust. But through it all, he had discovered his own strength and the importance of standing up for what was right. He had protected Ethan, brought Chase to justice, and reclaimed his own sense of purpose. One evening, as Ryan and Ethan sat on the couch watching a movie, Ethan looked up at his father. "Dad, are you happy now?" Ryan smiled, pulling his son close. "I am, buddy. Because no matter what, we've got each other. And that's all we really need." To anyone facing their own battles, Ryan's story serves as a reminder. Resilience isn't about avoiding hardship. It's about standing firm when life tests you. It's about recognizing your own worth, seeking support when you need it, and never letting someone else's lies define your truth. What about you? Have you ever faced a situation that tested your strength or forced you to grow in unexpected ways? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might just inspire someone else to find their own strength.